In an ancient Jurassic Earth, a caveman named Spear makes his way back home from fishing for food while avoiding predators, such as a giant crocodile and a pterosaur. When he finally reaches his family's den, he finds his wife, daughter, and son all being attacked and eaten by 3-horned theropods. Enraged, Spear takes on the trio, but their alpha parent appears and summons them back into the forest before they can attack Spear. A distraught Spear walks into the cave that once housed his family and angrily removes a cave painting of them. Later, he climbs a tall cliff and stands at its edge, where he attempts suicide. Ultimately, he decides to continue living and stays the rest of the night on the cliff. As the sun rises the next morning, Spear sees a vision of his mate and children in the sun, which gives him a chance to live. Sometime later, while hunting fish for himself to eat, Spear spots the shadow of a Tyrannosaurus, catching a mouthful of fish before retreating into a marsh. Still filled with hatred, as he mistakenly believes it to be one of the horned theropods who killed his family, Spear follows the dinosaur with the plan of killing it. Upon catching up with the Tyrannosaurus, Spear is shocked as he finds out that it is a hornless female with 2 young cubs. Before Spear can act further, the same theropods that had killed his family arrive and attempt to kill the mother and her offspring while choosing to ignore Spear. Not wanting to see another family torn apart, Spear intervenes by helping the mother Tyrannosaurus kill the hostile dinosaurs. With the pack now dead, the little cubs approach Spear and nuzzle him affectionately for saving them, while Spear smiles as he reminds them of his children. However, the moment is interrupted as the pack's alpha bursts from the marsh and attacks the group. Spear and the mother Tyrannosaurus, now known as Fang, helplessly watch as the massive alpha devours the young cubs in a single bite. After a long and brutal fight with the help of Fang, Spear manages to slay the alpha by impaling it through the brain with his spear, finally avenging both his family and Fang's children, although Fang is left distraught over the loss of her offspring. Later, Spear wanders on a beach alone, contemplating the day's events. He is suddenly approached by Fang, who appears to want to follow him since she has nothing left. After a moment of consideration, Spear accepts Fang as his new companion, and the two decide to head off on new adventures. Spear is chasing down a large wild boar in order to kill it for food. As he aligns his spear to throw it at the animal, Fang intervenes by catching the boar herself and proceeds to eat it, stealing Spear's kill. Frustrated, Spear moves on and continues to hunt for more food. Eventually finding another boar, Spear manages to kill it and is excited to finally eat. Climbing down from a tree, he finds Fang eating his kill. Now enraged, Spear confronts Fang, screaming and pounding the ground in anger. Unfazed, Fang continues to eat the boar. Later, Spear climbs a tree in order to get some fruit. Fang sees this and rams the tree with her head, knocking both Spear and a handful of fruit down. Before Spear can eat the fruit, Fang eats all of it. Spear shoves Fang and threatens her, but ultimately backs down. At night, Spear and Fang sleep around a fire. Fang's heavy breathing agitates Spear, who throws stones at her face. Attempting to distract himself from the noise, Spear makes shadow puppets on the wall, causing him to remember his children. Spear then remembers that his children were devoured by a Tyrannosaurus, which Fang happens to be. Spear stares Fang down, seething in anger. Sensing this, Fang awakens and growls back. The next day, Spear is out hunting a deer. Yet again, Fang is prepared to steal the kill, but she is confronted by Spear. When Spear goes to kill the deer, Fang is already there to steal the kill, despite Spear's warning. Now enraged, Spear finally loses it and proceeds to fight Fang for the kill, with the two actually hurting each other, drawing blood. The two come to an intense standoff, but the duo are horrified when they notice a pile of massive snakes surrounding the immediate forest. Just as Spear and Fang start to slowly back away, a flash flood swoops over the area, carrying with it hundreds of large snakes. Spear and Fang work together to survive the flood in a gigantic individual snake, eventually coming to earn each other's trust and respect. Fang even tends to Spear's head injury after the latter had hit his head on a rock during the flood. They learn how to hunt together and end up sharing their kills at the end of every hunt, as a team. The next day, a herd of mammoths is traversing through a blizzard, but an elderly individual in the herd struggles to keep up due to its old age, and is eventually separated due to the blizzard. Later, after the storm had died down, the elderly mammoth wanders aimlessly through the frozen terrain, searching for the herd, before suddenly being ambushed by Spear and Fang. Though initially putting up a tough fight, the elderly mammoth is ultimately overwhelmed by the duo and is killed. Spear proceeds to skin the mammoth, taking large quantities of fur and meat, as well as also taking the deceased mammoth's only tusk. After traversing the terrible snow blizzard, Spear and Fang find a small cave to eat and spend the night in. While Fang is content with the day's hunt, Spear, meanwhile, thinks back to when he first taught his son how to hunt. He remembers teaching his son about respecting animals and being grateful for the food they provide. Meanwhile, the elderly mammoth's herd finds its corpse scavenged by wolves. Chasing the scavengers off, the herd surrounds their elder's body and begins to mourn. Startled and filled with rage, the herd spots Fang and Spear's footprints and proceeds to follow them. The mammoth herd soon finds Spear and Fang at the cave and fights them for the tusk. After being cornered and nearly killed, Spear swings the elderly mammoth's tusk wildly in defense of himself. Noticing the reaction of the mammoths, Spear realizes that they only came to retrieve the tusk. Respectfully, Spear offers the tusk to the matriarch, who takes it and leaves with the herd without further violence. Sometime later, the mammoth herd delivers the tusk to a mammoth graveyard, filled with the bones of their ancestors and other members of the herd. Proceeds to perform a ritual around their fallen elder, swaying back and forth, rumbling and running their trunks over its tusk one last time, as they say their final goodbyes to their deceased member. On another evening, Fang is seen running through an open field with Spear on her back as a massive pack of raptors pursues them. After a lengthy chase with numerous raptors being killed by the duo, Spear and Fang are surrounded. Before they can pounce, the raptors suddenly flee the area, seemingly terrified. The moon suddenly turns blood red, and a thick fog envelops the area. While wandering, Spear and Fang spot an emaciated-looking caveman carrying the corpse of a wild boar on his back. After tripping and dislocating his leg, the caveman hoots and hollers, calling out to his family who watch from the safety of a cave. Another caveman runs out to retrieve the boar, but is suddenly snatched by a large flying creature. Wanting to help, Spear picks up the wounded caveman and the boar and carries them to the cave. The cavemen retreat deeper into the cave, leaving Spear and Fang confused. Suddenly, the duo are attacked by a flock of massive, crimson-red humanoid bats. After a brutal fight, the bats manage to capture Spear and bring him back up to their nest on a steep rocky mountain. Determined to find Spear, Fang tracks the bats down to their den. Playing possum, Fang tricks the bats into picking her up and bringing her inside their den. Inside, she finds Spear wrapped in a strange silk-like material. It is revealed that the bats share the cave with a massive prehistoric spider, whom they share a symbiotic relationship with. Fang fights the spider while Spear manages to break free of the webbing. Together, they kill the spider and escape the nest before the bats return. However, the bats manage to track Spear and Fang down upon finding out that the duo have killed the spider. The duo leads the bats into a patch of tall grass where the raptor pack resides. The raptors ambush the bats, and while the two species fight, Spear and Fang make a quick escape. Spear and Fang travel through the jungle and come across a peaceful oasis. While Fang drinks from the water and gets caught in a swarm of butterflies, Spear attempts to fish. To his surprise, the fish are completely unafraid, swimming directly into his hands. He quickly gathers a large pile, sharing them with Fang. However, when he turns away for a moment, Fang eats the entire pile, leaving Spear to chuckle at her sheepish look. They enjoy a moment of peace, with Fang placing her footprint next to Spear's handprint in the sand as a sign of trust and affection. However, Fang's tranquility is shattered when she spots an earthworm crawling from the ground, triggering a flashback to her near-death experience in a snake-infested flash flood, showing that the worm is harmless, but Fang refuses to listen, and Spear devours it. Afterward, Spear goes for a swim while Fang lounges on a boulder. As he swims underwater, Spear notices shadowy figures approaching Fang's resting spot. When he surfaces and climbs onto the rock, Fang is gone, with only footprints and disturbed sand indicating she was dragged into the forest. As he follows the trail, something knocks him out. Spear awakens bound in vines, being carried by humanoid Ape-Men. After being knocked unconscious again, he later finds himself tied up beside Fang, both suspended over an arena at night. The arena is filled with bloodthirsty Ape-Men, and a shaman initiates a brutal gladiatorial contest. A powerful fighter named Krog emerges victorious by defeating his opponents with brutal efficiency. As the crowd cheers, Fang is lowered into the arena, and Krog is granted a choice of 3 animal skulls and a mysterious black ooze from a stone bowl. Krog drinks the ooze and undergoes a monstrous transformation, growing larger and more powerful. Fang charges at Krog but is easily overpowered. He brutally beats her, breaking her leg and preparing to finish her off. Desperate, Spear breaks free and attacks Krog, only to be thrown aside. Seeing no other option, Spear climbs to the shaman's perch and drinks the entire bowl of black ooze, mutating into a massive turquoise-skinned beast. Now empowered, Spear easily defeats Krog, ripping off his arms and beating him with them. The other Ape-Men swarm the arena, but Spear massacres them all in a berserk rage. By morning, he emerges from a pile of corpses, reverting to his normal self. Stunned by the carnage, he turns his attention to Fang, who lies motionless. Kneeling beside his fallen companion, Spear desperately tries to wake her, but she does not respond, leaving him in despair. After slaughtering the Ape-Men who captured him, Spear mourns over Fang, who seems to have been killed by the Ape-Men's late champion. However, he soon discovers that the Tyrannosaur is still alive, if severely injured. As Spear fetches a water sack from nearby, his attention is drawn to some vultures scavenging on the remains of the Ape-Men. After shooing them away, Spear returns to Fang's side, giving her some water before using the rest to make clay for her wounds. This is uncomfortable for Fang, but it seems to be working. As Spear continues working on Fang's injuries, the vultures return in greater numbers. Realizing that the arena is no longer safe, Spear attempts to move Fang, but she proves far too heavy for even his great strength. Fortunately, Spear gets the idea to fashion a makeshift stretcher for Fang using bamboo sticks and vines lying around the arena. He even makes a new spear after finding a sharp stone in a spare stick. With considerable effort, he manages to push Fang onto the stretcher and lift it enough to drag it. Later on, Spear is forced to stop as his hands are covered in blisters. As the sun begins to set, he hears a creature's calls from the woods, which turns out to be a wild dog. He creates fire to form a defensive perimeter whilst they rest for the night. The dog watches them, but makes no effort to attack. The next morning, Spear creates a harness to add to the stretcher, allowing him to pull Fang far more easily. However, an ever-growing number of dogs are following in his wake. Spear spots a small cave to shelter him and Fang for the night as the dogs continue to watch them. Spear is awoken by several small flesh-eating insects crawling on his face. Realizing that they are attracted to the defenseless Fang, he proceeds to attack them, but soon discovers that they're both vulnerable and helpless after being flipped onto their backs. After killing the bugs, he cooks them over a fire, feeding some to Fang and eating others himself. The following morning, Spear goes to collect more water. Smelling the wild dogs nearby, he blocks the cave entrance with several large boulders to protect Fang. The Tyrannosaur awakens in the evening to the sounds of numerous dogs around the cave, attempting to find a way in until Spear returns and fights through them on his way back inside. Seeing the numerous scratches covering Spear's body, Fang struggles to her feet. However, Spear convinces her to stay down and recover her strength while he fends off the scavengers. Noticing a few insect carcasses lying around, he can use their durable spiked shells as makeshift knuckle dusters. Thus armed, Spear climbs out of the blocked cave entrance to find hundreds of wild dogs waiting for him. His improvised weapons prove to be incredibly useful against the attackers, but their sheer numbers begin to overwhelm him. Suddenly, the rocks in front of the cave are sent flying as Fang literally bursts onto the stage, fully recovered and ready to help Spear. With her added strength and ferocity, the wild dogs are sent fleeing for their lives, leaving Spear and Fang to roar triumphantly. In a peaceful forested valley, a herd of Tyrannosaurus lives undisturbed, feeding, drinking, and tending to their nests. Their tranquility is shattered when one member encounters a deathly ill hadrosaur, its body visibly decaying as it moves erratically. Ignoring the creature at first, the Argentinosaurus reacts only after being bitten on the leg, where it dies in a futile struggle. Unaware of the danger, the bitten Argentinosaurus inspects its wounds and heads to the pond for a drink. As it walks, its movements slow, and its flesh begins to decay unnaturally. Drinking large amounts of water fails to soothe it, instead causing it to vomit blood into the pond. Its herdmates watch in alarm as pustules spread across its body. The valley erupts into chaos when the infected Argentinosaurus turns on its own herd. One member attempts to resist, but has its throat torn out. The infected sauropod then massacres the rest, crushing, biting, and slamming them into the landscape. Later, Spear and Fang enter the same forest, disturbed by the untouched corpses. Even scavengers and insects avoid the scene. Fang sniffs a body and recoils in fear. As they take in the horror, the infected Argentinosaurus rises and roars. Realizing they cannot fight it, Spear and Fang flee, leading a chase through the woods. They evade the beast by jumping into a ravine, where it crashes at the bottom and loses consciousness. Exhausted, they retreat to a cave to rest. Spear has a nightmare of being bitten by the same plague monster, watching his body decay, only to see Fang suffering the same fate. Jolting awake, he checks on their foe, finding it still motionless. He and Fang cautiously descend the cliff to escape through the ravine. As they pass the Argentinosaurus' rotting body, it suddenly reanimates and resumes the chase. They barely escape through a narrow crevasse, forcing it to thrash helplessly. Fleeing into a volcanic plain, they endure burning embers and unstable ground. Just as they turn back, the infected Argentinosaurus tears itself free, exposing much of its ribcage. With no other option, Spear and Fang rush through the lava field, where the monster's neck is burned by a geyser. Enraged, it leaps but crashes through the brittle ground, falling into molten lava. Spear and Fang leap onto its back, using its neck as a ramp to escape. The beast's next attempt to jump out results in its complete entrapment. It howls one last time. Spear and Fang watch in stunned silence as a single ember lands on Spear's palm, reflecting on the creature's gruesome end. Spear and Fang are traveling through the jungle at night, attempting to reach a bright green sky-high flame. They arrive at the edge of the scene and witness a bearded caveman suspended above the green flames, screaming in agony as a group of witches intensify the fire. The witches then perform a chant that summons the pteranodon-riding head witch to the site of the ritual. She makes her way down to the fire, raises her staff, and shapeshifts into a tall, black demon with light green highlights. The bearded caveman has a magical snake travel down his throat, which causes all the markings painted on his body to shift towards his stomach. The snake emerges from his throat and sucks the life force out of him, mummifying him. The snake slithers into the head witch, forming a baby in her stomach, which she plucks out and hands to the eager witches. The pteranodon spots Spear and Fang and alerts the head witch, causing the witches to pursue them into the jungle. Spear and Fang lose each other, and while Spear is fending off his pursuers, Fang is being mind-controlled by the small witch Lula. Spear awakens the next morning and finds himself tied above the fire pit. Lula returns on Fang's back, to which Spear becomes incredibly distraught, screaming and thrashing around. His cries temporarily break the mind-controlling spell until Lula pauses time and travels into the memories of Spear and Fang. She visits Fang's memory first, where we are taken to her original home and witnesses her offspring hatching. Lula fast-forwards to the events where she watches Spear defending Fang's offspring and their subsequent deaths. She returns to the present, gives Fang a hug, then goes into Spear's past. Lula arrives at Spear's cave shortly before his daughter is born, watches as he takes her outside, then fast-forwards to when they are eaten by the horned theropod pack. Lula unfreezes time and returns to her hut where she parts a hanging cloth, revealing a wall drawing of her and a child. Lula travels into her own memories of the day the child was born. Her memories take her to a field of flowers, where Lula and her daughter spent time together when a scream is heard. Past Lula goes to investigate and finds her daughter has fallen off a cliff, sending her into tears. She returns to the present and prepares Spear's markings for the next ritual. Upon nightfall, the head witch returns to perform, but Lula sneaks up to the pteranodon's perch and kills it, then sets Spear free using a mind-controlled Fang. Infuriated, the head witch shapeshifts into a giant wolf and attacks Fang. Lula transforms into a huge raven and distracts the head witch long enough to allow Spear and Fang to escape deep into the jungle. Lula is eventually overpowered and killed by the head witch, severing the bond between her and Fang. Lula now walks along with her daughter. They run towards each other and share a hug, finally together. In the dead of night, a Smilodon roams the forest in search of prey. It picks up a scent and begins growling at an unseen creature among the trees, only to be swiftly and violently attacked. Camping nearby, Spear and Fang overhear the assault. They momentarily ready themselves for battle, but stand down when the apparent threat fails to appear. The following morning, Spear and Fang travel deeper into the forest, where they stumble across the Smilodon's brutalized corpse. Fang is extremely agitated, to the point where she briefly flees into the woods. She takes one sniff of the carcass and roars at it with fierce intensity, Spear examining the remains for a while before he and Fang continue onward. When night falls, the mysterious creature becomes active again, stalking a passing herd of ceratopsians. One stops to drink from a stream before sensing something amiss. It turns to face the threat only to be swiftly slaughtered. The rest of the herd flies into a panic as they're picked off one by one. Once again, Spear and Fang hear the noises from their campsite. Visibly disturbed by the sounds of carnage, Spear grabs his weapon and moves to join the battle. After a brief argument, Spear reluctantly stands down, leaving him and Fang to try to get some rest as the screams of the herd echo into the night. Once the sun rises, Spear and Fang go hunting, quite on edge after the events of the previous night. They're startled by a tiny theropod as it hunts for insects, which Fang sends running with an annoyed roar. Hearing the cries of crows, Spear climbs a tree and spots the birds gathering to scavenge the results of the previous night's slaughter. He and Fang begin moving further from the carnage when a brutal windstorm hit. They take shelter behind a rock when they hear an unnatural screech. They believe they are being followed by the creature, but Spear sees that the noise originated from a tree branch scraping on a rock. Later in the day, the duo make camp, observing a large fly being eaten by a mantis before settling in for the night. Despite their best efforts to keep an eye open for their unknown pursuer, they soon fall asleep around the fire. Moments later, the flames are put out by a strong gust of wind. As the last embers die, the creature's call awakens them. They take up defensive stances, but their nerves get the better of them when they hear something crashing through the underbrush. The pair sprint deeper into the woods, reaching a lower region enveloped by fog. As they stop to catch their breath, the unseen creature catches up, barely missing them as it slashes through the trunk of a massive tree. It gives chase to Spear, who barely stays one step ahead as it tears through several more trees in pursuit of him. Following the trail of destruction, Fang manages to get a bead on the creature. However, it seems to slip away. She quickly shakes it off before running in the opposite direction as Spear, both of them roaring to try to confuse their unseen assailant. Spear can only grab his weapon and flail it around in blind desperation, creates a spark that sends the unseen creature fleeing entirely. Realizing that the monster has a weakness after all, Spear contemplatively ignites the head of his spear as Fang rejoins him, ready to turn the tables on the mysterious killer. The next night, the unseen creature frantically flees through the forest as Spear and Fang terrorize it with sparks and burning trees. Spear throws his flaming weapon into its chest, causing it to burst into flames and revealing its true appearance, putting an end to its reign of terror over the forest. A few days later, Spear and Fang are fishing in a shallow lagoon when a bald-headed Homo sapien woman with a wooden collar around her neck, a scorpion tattoo on the back of her head, and metal cuffs on her wrists suddenly bursts out from the water, followed by a Leopleurodon. As the two battle and eventually kill the sea creature, the woman disappears into the woods, though Spear gives pursuit. They come to a brief moment of peace before Fang appears and scares the woman away. Determined not to let her escape, Spear resumes the chase and cuts the stranger off, leaving her cornered. After a short standoff, Spear lowers his weapon and himself in a peaceful manner. He notices that the woman is cold and makes a campfire for the night before going to sleep. The woman wakes up in the middle of the night and begins praying to the moon as Spear watches. The trio sets off in the morning and travels through various landscapes, such as a volcano range, some grasslands, jungle, and mountainous terrain. They settle down to eat, but the stranger has difficulty eating the raw meat provided by Spear. Instead, she forages local plant matter and a turtle shell to make a stew pot, the smell of which seems to attract Fang as she grabs a carrot-like vegetable from the woman and almost immediately swallows it. Spear does not share the same appreciation for it, and later, again, she prays to the moon that night. The woman wakes up the next morning in discomfort from the large wooden collar around her neck. Spear uses Fang's powerful bite to destroy it, then uses a rock to break off the 2 iron cuffs on the woman's wrist. In appreciation, she speaks her name to Spear, Mira, though he seems not to take notice or does not fully understand what she is saying. Traveling onwards, Mira gathers local materials, which she eventually uses to make a bow, killing a mid-sized avian dinosaur Spear and Fang failed to kill. Feasting on their latest kill, Mira illustrates her backstory in the dirt, giving narration in her language, explaining that her people were enslaved by invaders led by tyrannical warriors represented by a scorpion image, but she was the only one who managed to escape. Spear seems to understand somewhat what she drew and looks unnerved by the scorpion image. The group later cross a deep river by riding on Fang's back as she swims under the water. The party arrives at a cave surrounded by loose rocks, which Fang struggles to climb up, but Mira successfully uses food as an incentive to climb. At night, Mira prays to the moon again, which drives Spear's curiosity enough to inquire about it. Mira gives a short explanation before going to sleep, as Spear gazes longingly at the moon. At dusk, Spear and Fang are awoken and ambushed by a large group of monkey men who have captured Mira. Spear and Fang inflict heavy casualties using Mira's bow, Spear's spear, and the monkey men's own weapons against them before attempting to search for Mira in the foggy forest. They use her screams for help as a guide and come across a number of monkey men corpses littered with arrows, something Spear has only seen Mira use. He finds footprints in the sand, and using Mira's screams, pinpoints the direction to run in. They reach the coast only to find they are too late, as Mira has already been taken onto a boat whose sail bears the same icon Mira's head does. With the boat disappearing over the horizon, Spear utters his first word, Mira, while Fang roars in sadness. Spear and Fang are heartbroken after watching Mira be taken away across the sea. Determined to save her, Spear begins frantically swimming in the boat's direction, but struggles to stay above the surface, eventually washing up back on the beach. Spear doesn't give up, as he begins chopping down multiple trees to construct a crude raft. By the next morning, the raft is ready to sail, but Fang is less than eager to step aboard. That is until Spear lures her on using some large bugs. The duo uses the momentum from the waves to travel a great distance. Next, Spear begins to paddle the raft as it slows down. After an extended period of pushing the raft, he climbs back on, exhausted from the laborious task. Fang eventually steps in and uses her large, thick tail to propel the raft until she too tires from the journey. The two rest during the night, where hundreds of shooting stars can be seen falling behind them. Sea creatures like jellyfish and a herd of whales swim past under a lunar eclipse. Come morning, they have no food and must scour the ocean, but are unable to find even a single fish. Later in the day, a largely hidden creature swims past, causing Spear to dive in after it, only to discover it is a giant sea turtle. He tries to strangle it to death, which proves to be ineffective, until he forces it to the surface right by Fang, who scores a lethal bite on its neck. They feast on the turtle's carcass and even use its shell and some of its bones to construct a shelter. In an approaching storm, their flying fish haul is interrupted by pterodactyl-like creatures and a massive shark who destroys the raft, throwing them both into the increasingly choppy seas. Spear ends up in the shark's mouth, but frees himself by stabbing it with a broken piece of the raft. The enormous waves caused by the storm begin thrashing the two around. Spear continues to use raft debris to attack the giant shark, and jabbed the sharp wood right into its eye. This victory is short-lived, however, as the raging tides batter them. Fang washes up on an entirely new beach, alone and unconscious. She becomes mobile quickly and frantically searches the beach for her friend, but to no avail. She roars in frustration and desperation. Since washing up on a new beach, Fang continues to wait in case Spear washes up. A crackling noise from the forest behind her attracts her attention, and she goes to investigate. On her way, she mistakes a mossy branch for Spear, then sees another dinosaur-shaped object run past, prompting her to search around a large rock formation. She discovers a fresh set of unfamiliar tracks and encounters a red Tyrannosaurus, but he runs off. She follows the rocks, but is unable to find the new dinosaur. Elsewhere, Spear has washed up on the same island, but nowhere near where Fang did. A trio of humanoid figures approaches him and carries him off the beach, heading inland. Fang and Red are competing to hunt an Arsinoitherium, and whilst both are successful in catching it, Red submits and releases the catch before turning to walk away. Fang throws a chunk of meat his way before the two share their catch. Spear wakes up completely submerged in mud in a strange hut. As he goes to move, he experiences a sudden sharp pain in his right arm. As he stands back up, a one-eyed woman startles him, causing him to knock over some bottles and starting a small purple fire. He is quickly pursued through a village by a small horde of warriors, who he is able to single-handedly defeat. Eventually, they corner him in a ruined house, but the leader intervenes and provides Spear some food and water, thereby proving they mean him no harm. Meanwhile, Fang and Red travel together and find a fruit tree and begin eating from it. Some fruits on the ground have fermented, however, and after consuming a large amount of the fermented fruits, the two become intoxicated. Back in the village, Spear's wounds are being treated by the local healer. He blows a pink powder in his face, putting him to sleep. Deeper into the forest, Red and Fang are continuing to bond, while Spear is invited into the leader's home. Red and Fang find a cliff to sleep on for the night, while Spear manages to bond with a local village dog. The following morning, Red leads Fang through the mist through a series of spiked wooden posts before revealing the Celtic village. Red begins attacking local villagers and Fang joins in, only for Spear to emerge from a house to see her with a pair of legs dangling from her mouth. Red goes to charge at Spear, though Fang blocks him from doing so, and Spear halts more locals from attacking. Unaware that Red and Fang have bonded, he jumps on her back, only to be thrown off, but also saved from being attacked further by Red. A tense three-way standoff begins, before quickly erupting into full-on combat. Fang is knocked out by flying debris, preventing her from interfering with the fight, which only becomes more intense, as the villagers soon join in on Spear's side against the dinosaur. Multiple houses are destroyed, including the healing woman's house, which causes a small explosion, launching Spear and Red to their final battleground. Spear is wounded many times by Red, and even comes close to being killed by him, but Fang once again saves him. Fang defeats Red by giving him a powerful jump kick into some spiky wooden debris, fatally skewering him. Fang seems almost regretful for him, and even comforts Red as he bleeds to death. A wounded Spear witnesses this, and he too becomes saddened of the whole ordeal, although perhaps for different reasons. The chief speaks to Spear, but he leaves with a visibly depressed Fang back into the forest. A rainstorm arrives in the forest as Spear and Fang are still with events from the village. The duo wanders through the forest for a short while before finding a cave to rest in and shelter from the storm. Inside the cave, Spear lights a fire and discovers the cave is deeper than it first appeared. He lights a torch and finds an elaborate series of wall paintings depicting many humanoid forms, dinosaurs, and mammals. He studies them for a moment and compares his hand to some prints on the wall before returning to sleep by the fire. In the morning, Spear goes for a peaceful walk through the forest until he stops at the edge of some plains. He imagines some events depicted on the cave walls in front of him, such as a male human raising his hand at him. As he continues to wander the plains, he finds the ruins of a long-abandoned village and imagines the people that could have lived there and what they could have been doing while they lived there. He brings back a full deer to Fang to try and get her to move, but this does nothing. Spear wakes up in the middle of the night and is drawn outside by the moon. He remembers Mira praying to the moon and mimics the gestures she made while praying, though he does not understand what the purpose of it is. Spear is distracted by an owl watching him and scares it off. Later in the night, he and Fang are awakened by a bear carrying an axe-wielding Viking and are forced to abandon the cave, which is collapsing from the bear and dinosaur roars. Once outside, Spear and Fang encounter a second Viking, riding a bear of his own, but carrying a sword instead of an axe. After taking down both bears and the second Viking, the first Viking raises his axe and gives a battle cry before pulling out a round wooden shield which bears a red scorpion symbol. Upon seeing the symbol, Spear immediately calls out Mira's name, which causes the warrior to drop his axe and shield and flee into the woods. Spear picks up the shield, mounts Fang, and the duo chase after their enemy, with Spear managing to injure his foe by throwing his titular weapon through his leg. Spear recovers his weapon and demands to know where Mira is from the Viking. The warrior instead pulls out a sword. Fang picks him up with her jaws and snaps him in half. Spear takes the Viking's sword for himself, as well as its scabbard. He and Fang then notice a bear print nearby and set off searching for Mira once more. The duo make a break through the vast countryside and make much progress in the day. Their journey eventually deposits them on high ground overlooking a small Viking village. Spear scouts the village from this vantage point, but must leave Fang behind to maintain his stealthy advantage. Creeping through the village, he is able to locate the shack, which is housing Mira and many more captives. Mira and Spear greet each other once more and set the slaves free. As they are walking back through the village, however, roars and growls can be heard from the mist. Spear, knowing what threat lies beyond, narrows his eyes and prepares for a fight. Spear prepares to face a group of bear riders emerging from the mist. The party's leader recognizes the sword Spear wields as belonging to a fallen Viking warrior. The riders draw their weapons and advance, but the bears detect a greater threat in Fang. Fang kills the leader, triggering a brutal fight. Mira and the other slaves seize the chance to escape. As the chaos spreads, more Vikings awaken. Rika, a Viking woman, emerges from her home with her child to lead the defense. Spear slaughters multiple Vikings with his sword, while from a rooftop, Mira spots a potential escape route through the woods. She grabs a spear from a rack. The villagers surround Spear with a shield wall. Rika's child, positioned on a rooftop, fires arrows at him. Mira kills a bear with her spear, takes the rider's axe, and decapitates her as her first act of violence. More Vikings and archers join the fight. Spear breaks free from the shield wall, killing several attackers, and throws one into Rika's child, knocking him down. Rika enters the fray, throwing a large axe into Fang's leg and stabbing her in the snout with a spear. Fang retaliates by seizing Rika's legs in her jaws and smashing her into the ground repeatedly until she dies. Distraught, Rika's child leaps onto Spear's back. Spear throws him off into a rock, killing him instantly. Shocked by the accidental killing, Spear rejoins Fang as a thick red mist engulfs the village, allowing them to slip away. Their escape is blocked by a sheer cliff, leaving them exposed to Viking arrows. Cornered, Spear and Fang go on the offensive, using the mist to slaughter their pursuers. Once all the Vikings are dead, they join Mira at the docks and flee aboard a Viking boat. Later, another boat arrives carrying slaves and 2 Vikings, the chieftain and his eldest son, Eldar. They call out to the village but receive no response. Docking, they find a blood trail and notice a missing boat. Investigating, they discover a corpse surrounded by crows. As the mist clears, the chieftain sees the massacre's aftermath. Frantically calling for Rika, he searches their dwelling and finds her body where Fang killed her. He weeps over her before Eldar arrives, carrying the body of his younger sibling. The two embrace, mourning the destruction of their tribe. With the village burning, they collect the corpses, wrap them, and place them in a tomb sealed with a large rock. Returning to their boat, they release their slaves to make room for the bodies of Rika and the child. They set sail, preparing to cremate the dead at sea. The chieftain readies a flaming arrow but cannot fire it, overcome with grief. Eldar takes the bow and completes the ritual, setting the ship ablaze. Their duty to the dead fulfilled, the chieftain and Eldar don heavy armor and set out on a journey of vengeance. In 1890 England, scientist Blakely is driven by cart to an elaborate countryside manor owned by Lord Darlington. Inside, fellow scientists Charles, Giroud, and Bertie await. Charles delivers a lecture on evolution, primal instincts, and the similarities between modern man and their primitive ancestors. The others dismiss his ideas, making jokes. Their discussion is interrupted by the local constable, who warns them of an escaped inmate from a nearby insane asylum, advising them to remain alert and indoors. Later, Lord Darlington disputes Charles' theory. A loud noise upstairs draws their attention, noticed by the butler Stevens. A second, louder crash sends plaster falling from the ceiling, but it is brushed off as Stevens resolving the disturbance. As the men resume their discussion, a drop of blood lands in Bertie's drink. Looking up, they see it seeping through a ceiling crack. Alarmed, Darlington, Charles, and Giroud head upstairs to investigate. They find Stevens' corpse being eaten by the escaped inmate, who notices them. The trio flee downstairs, using furniture and swords to fend him off. In the struggle, Giroud and Bertie are killed, leaving only Darlington, Charles, and Blakely. The survivors barricade themselves in another room, but hear the dying screams of the cook, Miss Kensington, before the beast bursts through a window. They flee to an armory stocked with melee and ranged weapons. Darlington loads a revolver to shoot the convict who has pinned Charles to the floor, but misses as the inmate climbs atop a tall cabinet. Multiple shots fail to hit him due to his agility. Arming themselves with several firearms, the three men search the manor. The inmate reappears, dodging gunfire and overpowering Blakely, using him as a human shield. He charges Charles but is driven back when Darlington grazes his shoulder with a rifle shot. Leaving the injured Blakely behind, Darlington and Charles pursue the convicts to the lounge, where he ambushes them from the ceiling. Losing their firearms, Darlington challenges the inmate to hand-to-hand combat. A fallen plaque reveals Darlington was an Oxford boxing champion in 1858. Using his boxing skill, he lands multiple blows, but is caught in a chokehold. Charles distracts the man with a sword and shield, giving Darlington the chance to arm himself with a bow. He lands several arrows, forcing the convicts to retreat into the greenhouse. Darlington and Charles follow. In the ensuing fight, Charles is severely beaten, suffering a massive shoulder bite, while Darlington nearly drowns. Recovering, Darlington rushes back into the fray wielding a large bone, imitating Spear's combat style. A storm topples a large tree in the greenhouse, giving Darlington a new weapon, a spear. Stripping off his shirt, he attacks from above, fully mirroring Spear's feral mannerisms. In a rage, Darlington drives the spear repeatedly into the beastman, inflicting deep wounds. He finishes the fight with a final killing blow to the head, in a manner eerily similar to Spear's defeat of the Alpha Rex. Charles, thrilled, declares this proves his earlier theory about mankind's primal instincts. Spear wakes aboard the ship he, Mira, and Fang had stolen from the Viking village. Mira tends to Fang's injuries as well. Their respite is cut short when the Viking chieftain and his son Eldar ambush them, seeking revenge for their village's destruction. A fierce battle erupts. Spear fights the chieftain, while Mira shields Fang from Eldar's arrows. Spear knocks the chieftain's helmet off, and Fang overpowers Eldar. The fight halts when the two ships collide and crash into jagged shoreline rocks. Their ship splits in half. Mira steers the enemy ship to shore, avoiding disaster. The chieftain and Eldar resume their attack until Fang grabs Eldar and throws him overboard. The chief dives in after his son. Spear notices their ship's hull is damaged and taking on water. Mira lands the vessel safely and, with Spear and Fang's help, anchors it to a tree. On shore, Fang begins behaving erratically, sniffing the forest before building a nest. Spear recalls her grief over Red's death and realizes she is preparing to lay eggs, filling him with joy. He gathers nest padding while Fang works. Meanwhile, the chieftain rescues Eldar from the river, and they tend to their wounds before camping for the night. The chieftain has visions of Rika's death and a horned figure. Eldar returns with a deer, which they cook, stirring the chieftain's memory of family meals and sibling rivalry between his sons. Tearful, he goes to the river for solace, but is startled by a vulture. This inspires him to target their nest. In the forest, Fang lays 3 blue eggs, while Spear and Mira watch. When Spear tries to touch one, Fang knocks him away. At the cliffs above the river, the chieftain and Eldar climb towards the vulture's nest. Eldar leaps onto a bird mid-flight, while the chieftain ropes another, gaining control. They take to the skies in search of their enemies. Back at Fang's nest, Spear fishes for her, and Mira repairs the boat. The Vikings arrive on their vulture mounts. Spear and Fang defend the eggs, while Mira provides bow cover. Eldar's bird seizes Mira and ascends, but she grabs its claw to avoid falling, then swings onto its back. She forces it to descend by pulling its neck ropes despite Eldar's attacks. Spear forces the chieftain's mount to take off, engaging him in mid-air combat. Mira and Eldar's fight continues until she drops onto Spear's bird as it passes beneath her. Spear and the chieftain trade blows before Spear bites his hand, then throws him from the vulture into the forest. The chieftain survives the fall, but Spear kicks Eldar from the bird, killing him on impact. Grief-stricken, the chieftain drifts into the river, carried away. With their attackers gone, Mira and Spear return to Fang on the vultures. Spear approaches her nest, and when Fang lowers her head, he embraces her. The Viking chieftain washes ashore from the river, bleeding to death. 3 beautiful women descend from the sky to take him away, but from his blood pool, pairs of red arms emerge, pulling him into a hole and down a tunnel. He crashes in an underworld of magma, where similar creatures toss dead Vikings into the lava. At the top of stairs, he finds a gigantic horned figure on a throne. The floor cracks beneath him, revealing Eldar's body drifting in magma. The horned creature conjures a fireball, showing Spear and Fang, offering the chieftain another chance at vengeance. He accepts, engulfed in flames, transforming into a dark, fiery being. Elsewhere, Spear sits on the beach while Mira tends to Fang, curled around her new eggs. Spear tries moving the eggs, but Fang refuses. He and Mira attempt to relocate them into the boat as Mira lures Fang with meat while Spear takes the eggs. Fang catches Spear and forces him to return them, but discovers one missing, but Mira has it. Before tensions escalate, Fang sees Spear and Mira building a nest in the boat. She then brings her other 2 eggs and settles in. They sail into the ocean, resting peacefully under a night sky. Fang spots something faint in the fog, but ignores it. In the morning, Spear fishes, then notices a massive ship emerging from the fog. 3 smaller vessels grapple their boat. Spear readies his spear and shield. Mira climbs the mast with her bow, and Fang protects the eggs in her mouth. The enemy ships ram them, releasing Egyptian warriors. Spear and Mira fight them, but another boat delivers a towering Egyptian named Kamau. Spear's attack fails, and Mira's arrows barely harm him. And Fang engages. Kamau punches her snout, causing her to drop the eggs. One smashes, killing the unborn dinosaur. Shocked, Fang attacks Kamau, with Spear and Mira joining in. The fight stops when the Egyptian queen appears holding the remaining eggs, backed by an army. Their boat is burned as they're taken aboard the Egyptians' massive ship, the Colossaeus. Inside the ship city, Spear and Fang are jailed in adjacent cells. Kamau is also imprisoned, revealing he too is a captive. Kamau shows regret over the broken egg. Mira is locked in another cell with young women, sitting in despair. Later, Egyptians attempt to shackle Fang with a giant restraint. One clamps it onto her ankle. Spear aids her through the bars, but the queen threatens to smash an egg, forcing Spear to calm Fang and obey. Mira sees smaller boats in the fog, rowed by slaves, with Spear, Fang, Kamau, and soldiers aboard. The boats approach a Babylonian kingdom, coming under arrow fire. The soldiers, along with Kamau, Spear, and Fang, are released to fight in an invasion. They face Babylonian troops with war elephants. Spear mounts Fang, and together they cut through soldiers and elephants. Spear climbs the fortress wall, defeating defenders, while Fang aids Egyptians in battering the gates. The gates fall, and the Babylonian king arrives with guards. Spear and Fang roar in triumph at breaching the fortress. In a forested area, the Viking chieftain emerges from the ground in a transformed state, now able to conjure weapons from fire and walk across water without being extinguished. Back in Babylon, the Egyptian queen and her soldiers revel in the spoils of victory as gold, weapons, jewelry, and treasures taken from the captured Babylonian king. The queen, clearly pleased, orders the king executed by having a spear thrust through his back and out his chest. She allows the battered and arrow-pierced Kamau a brief, tender moment with his daughter, who is held hostage to ensure his obedience. Fang remains visibly angry at the queen for stealing her eggs, but calms slightly under Spear's coaxing. Soon after, Spear, Fang, and Kamau are forced into more campaigns, plundering distant lands, a Qing dynasty city in the Far East, an early Slavic settlement, and a Greco-Roman city. After each battle, the trio return to the Colossaeus wounded and tend to their injuries in a large bathing room. The Colossaeus then comes under attack from a Philistine naval army. Despite fierce oppositions, the Philistines are defeated by Fang's aggressive charge, Spear's agility and reflexes, Kamau's brute strength, and the Egyptians' ballista-fired cannonballs. The enemy vessel is set ablaze and sinks, while the Colossaeus sails on. One night, Spear is awakened by music from the queen's throne room. The queen, seemingly unimpressed, watches a dancing girl perform. The captured Philistine king is held under guard near a balcony. Guards then bring Mira. Seeing Mira's discomfort, the queen rises and demonstrates the dance herself, moving sensually and catching the king's interest. Abruptly, she backkicks the king off the balcony, killing him. Returning to her throne, she continues to scowl until Mira resumes dancing, which finally earns the queen's smile. The Colossaeus reaches a peaceful settlement on the Indian subcontinent. The inhabitants, offering no resistance, present food as tribute to the queen. Unimpressed, she orders Kamau to execute them. Instead, he carries the food aboard the ship. The queen, angered by his defiance, grabs his daughter's hair as warning. Reluctantly, Kamau obeys, killing several townspeople. The act leaves him shocked, Spear regretful, and Fang furious as she returns to the ship in disgust. Later that night, Spear notices Kamau shedding a tear. A guard enters with raw meat for the captives and bends to retrieve a piece that has fallen near Spear's cell. Spear slams the guard's head and takes his keys. He frees himself and Kamau, though Kamau refuses to leave. Spear ascends to the surface, climbs the masts, and reaches the throne room at the top of a tower. There, he finds Mira dancing for the queen, who keeps Fang's eggs and Kamau's daughter beside her. Spear's intrusion triggers a fight in which he kills several guards and the queen's pet leopard. The queen proves a skilled, agile fighter. Amid the chaos, Mira seizes the eggs and Kamau's daughter and flees. The battle moves to the deck where the eggs hatch, their chick's cries summoning Fang. Overcome with maternal instinct, Fang smashes her cell and charges to the upper level. Spear exhausted from combat. The queen grabs the dinosaur chicks from Mira, while a guard seizes Kamau's daughter. Kamau arrives on deck, distraught to see both his daughter and the newborn dinosaurs still held captive, as the queen smirks at him. After a failed escape attempt, Ima orders Kamau to execute the captives Spear, Mira, and Fang's offspring in front of her army and the young dinosaurs. Kamau raises his axe, but recalls the first time he and his people encountered the queen. Kamau and his people had been peaceful giants, living off herding and farming in their village. While two giants harvested corn, masked warriors armed with kopeshes and spears threatened the villagers. Kamau tried to protect his daughter inside his hut. Fearing for her safety, he fought fiercely, killing many. In the chaos, he accidentally dropped her. The queen seized the child, forcing Kamau to surrender. Back in the present, Kamau brings his axe down, not on Spear or Fang, but on Fang's chains, freeing her. He throws his axe at Ima, who narrowly avoids it. Fang's offspring rush to her for a brief reunion. Spear breaks free by removing a stone embedded in the wood of his chains and using it as a weapon, killing nearby warriors. Mira frees Spear and grabs a bow and arrow. Kamau's daughter runs to him, but Ima seizes her. Kamau quickly retrieves her and carries her on his back. Ima turns her attention to a massive crossbow on her ship, intending to kill Fang. Kamau heads below deck towards the ship's hull. Ima fires but misses when Fang ducks. She reloads for a second shot, but Spear intercepts her. Meanwhile, Kamau finds his people enslaved as rowers. On deck, Spear battles Ima but is injured. An archer wounds Fang's red-striped offspring, making it cry out. Fang, enraged, charges into the archers attacking her. Mira grabs the injured chick, and Spear takes the other. Realizing the danger, and the five leap into the water. In the hull, guards attempt to stop Kamau, but he easily overpowers them, tossing some overboard. Inspired, one slave attacks an overseer, sparking a rebellion. The giants, led by Kamau, rise against their captors. From the water, Spear, Fang, Mira, and the young dinosaurs watch the revolt, then spot another ship. Spear boards it, kills the guards, and frees the slaves, who abandon ship. Ima gathers her remaining warriors, but the charging giants overwhelm and slaughter them. Kamau confronts Ima directly, swats her aside, and disarms her. Terrified, she struggles as he lifts her, carries her to the ship's edge, and throws her overboard to her death. The queen's mangled corpse crashes onto the deck, revealing Kamau as the one responsible. The five set sail together. Kamau shares a quiet moment with his daughter before spotting a burning figure on the horizon. The Viking chieftain, now a massive fire demon, pursuing Spear and Fang. We now go back into Spear's childhood. As a boy, he creates cave art alongside his father, the leader of a Neanderthal tribe. Their peaceful moment is shattered when a large pack of Smilodons attacks. Spear's father kills several, but is ultimately brought down and killed. Young Spear fights on, killing the remaining Smilodons. The tribe praises him and places his father's necklace around his neck, signifying his new role as leader. Spear wakes to Mira calling him, pointing out land ahead. He, Mira, Fang, and Fang's offspring disembark their ship and head inland. Mira breaks down crying, and Spear comforts her. A flashback reveals her husband was killed by Viking slavers before she was captured. While at sea, she freed herself with an axe and jumped overboard. That eventually led to meeting Spear and Fang. The group travels to the Aneti Plateau, spending the night in a cave. While Fang and her offspring sleep, Spear joins Mira in her nightly moon worship. The next morning, Fang wanders off and encounters Amara bathing, prompting a scream. Mira and Spear rush to investigate, and Mira joyfully reunites with Amara. Spear watches silently as they walk back to Mira's village, followed by Fang and her offspring. Villagers initially fear Spear and Fang, but Mira reassures them and gains their acceptance. That night, Spear sits by the campfire, eating and watching the villagers' cultural dance. Overwhelmed and feeling out of place, he leaves. Mira follows him and leads him to his new home in the village. Inside, Fang, her offspring, and Spear settle in, though Spear remains somber. That night, he creates a mural depicting his life, using his own blood for parts of it. The mural shows Mira and Fang with their families, but himself alone to the side. The next day, Mira finds the completed mural and understands his sense of isolation. The Viking chieftain, now imbued with fire powers by the fire giant, tracks down Spear and Fang attacking the village. Spear and Fang confront him, but are forced to retreat up a mountain. Cornered, they are both set aflame. Fang extinguishes herself, but Spear charges the chieftain, tackling him down the mountainside and pummeling him. The attack is futile, as Spear is fatally burned while the chieftain dragged back underground by the fire giant. Mira and the tribe recover Spear, bringing him home. The shaman tends to him, but realizes he will soon die. Fang and her offspring cry out in grief and leave. Alone with Spear, Mira sees his mural again and understands his longing for family. Knowing he has little time left and wanting to carry on his legacy, she climbs onto him and they have sex. Spear dies soon afterward. Years later, Fang and her now adult offspring remain in the village. Spear and Mira's daughter, now a teenager riding one of Fang's offspring. With that, ends the first 2 seasons of Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next season.